Welcome back to the Story Hour podcast, Voices Unscripted, Stories Rewritten with your host, Sara Jaswal. Today I am joined by a very special guest, and we're just going to jump right into it. We're going to talk about health, advocacy, and what it means to live with chronic pain. And I'm just going to go right into the story, and I hope you guys enjoy this episode. So today I have Jasmine Gandham, who shares her lived experience with endometriosis and adenomyosis to help raise awareness and encourage open conversations about women's health and chronic pain. She has experienced symptoms since adolescence and is passionate about helping people better understand the realities living with this condition. Outside of that, she enjoys spending time with her husband and her 5-year-old, hiking, biking, walking her dogs, spending time with her extended family and friends, and experimenting with anti-inflammatory recipes. Hi, Jasmine.
Hi, Sarah. Thanks for having me.
Welcome. It's so nice to have you back here again. How are you feeling? How are you
Fingers
doing
crossed.
today?
Good. Yeah. We have like a teeny bit of sun outside, so I'm happy about that. We were talking earlier about the weather and how much it affects our mood. So,
Totally.
hoping that the FIFA will bring good weather.
I know, right? And as I said to you, there's no sun here. It's like slowly peaking as I'm looking out the window. So crazy.
I know we're so desperate for sun. We're like flowers. We're like, please, just a little bit more.
I know. And you just spruce up the mood a little bit.
Yeah, totally.
Cool, cool. Okay, well, let's just jump right in. So we know that you have endometriosis and also adenomyosis, and so that's the premise of the topic of why we're even here today and how we got connected was talking about chronic health and pain and that journey that you went through. So anyone who's listening, I just want to let you know that this is Jasmine's experience. It's her personal lived experience, so it might look and likely will look different than your situation and your experiences. So this isn't to compare or any of that. She's just speaking from her own experience. And so take that as you will. And yeah, just wanting to throw that out there from the get-go, because a lot of times we can compare and think that our situations are so similar, but a lot of times they're not. The whole purpose of this is to bring awareness to this condition. Like I said, navigating chronic health. Obviously, I talk a lot about that on the show with myself, but just to bring awareness to this. And a big part of what we're going to talk about is the advocacy, because Jasmine had to advocate for herself for all of this. So we're going to get into that, but I just wanted to preface this episode with that. There's no medical advice here. Obviously, if you're going through something, reach out to your own practitioner and what have you. So, Jasmine, why don't you start off by taking us back to, I guess, when this all started, when your journey with endometriosis began, and then I think even the adenomyosis. Before you do that, actually, do you want to just explain to the listeners and to myself what each of those conditions actually is for people who have no idea what we're talking about?
Yeah, totally. Because I know there's so many people who, when I mention endometriosis, they're like, "What? What is that?" So yeah, happy to explain it. So, simple explanation: endometriosis is a condition where tissue similar to the lining of the uterus grows outside of the uterus. So it can grow in places like the ovaries, fallopian tubes, pelvic lining, the bowel, and even the bladder. And it causes things like inflammation, scarring, severe pain. And then adenomyosis, on the other hand, it's similar. It's when the tissue that normally lines the uterus grows into the muscle wall of the uterus. So that can cause an enlarged uterus, heavy bleeding, severe cramping, and deep pelvic pain. So I won't say always, but many times people would have both. And like I knew I had endometriosis. How many years has it been now? Maybe 6, 7 years ago. But adenomyosis, I just got diagnosed with last year.
Okay, so they're
Yeah.
separate essentially.
Yeah. Yeah, they're two separate conditions, but people that have one may experience having the other one as well.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just thought we start off with that so people actually know what that is.
Yeah.
And so now take us back. I think you said you were about 12 years old when you're experiencing extremely painful symptoms. What were those symptoms like and that alarmed you that something wasn't quite right in your body? Because you mentioned to me that you knew from back then that something was just not right. Like it wasn't just regular period pain. So talk to us about that time.
Yeah, so I think I was, yeah, probably about 12 years old when I started having symptoms. And it was weird because, around that time is when all the girls start talking and they're like, oh, I have my period, do you have your period? And, just comparing my symptoms with other people, it was weird because I had extremely painful periods. My stomach would be all inflamed. I would have a lot of pelvic pain. I'd have even thigh pain, just like burning feelings in my thighs. And it would almost feel like, and I've heard other people with endometriosis describe this too, but it almost feels like somebody has a knife and they're scraping the insides of you. It's really bad. And then nausea, vomiting sometimes, fainting. And then because of all the blood loss, low iron is also something that I experienced. And so just like, people would say like, oh, just take a Tylenol and an Advil, you'll be fine. But I would take both of those and they still wouldn't help. And then I would take like stronger painkillers that were prescribed to me that still wouldn't help. Or they would just make you so drowsy that you're just sleeping all day. So yeah, that's pretty much what I experienced early on.
That sounds like a lot. And that analogy that you're giving about the knife, that sounds horrific.
Yeah, it was very painful. And just knowing back then, like, my mom hadn't heard of endometriosis and nobody in my family knew. So I would almost like sometimes like I don't know if gaslighting is the right word, but I'd kind of put myself down like, oh, everybody else can handle these. Like, why can't I? Do I just have such a low pain threshold? But now of course I know that wasn't the case, but mentally it was a lot too because a lot of the times I would just think like, why can't I handle this? Everybody else can. Or like, people are in PE class or functioning like a normal person. Like, why can't I do that? I would have to go home a lot of times.
Yeah, you touch on obviously the mental health aspect of things, but also, yeah, that is gaslighting. I think we're so good at gaslighting ourselves. I just was having a conversation with a friend yesterday, in different contexts, but yeah, I did do that often and did that a lot too during my health journey as well. It's so easy to think, just suck it up, you're fine, like
Yeah.
it's okay. And I think culturally, obviously, we both come from Punjabi community and culture and South Asian community, and a lot of it is that like you're fine, it's okay, it's normal, let it go. And that can be really hard when you're like, no, something is just not right. And so that's
Yeah.
like a whole other conversation on its own, right? And you said you did experience that a little bit in the sense that your mom, she had no idea what that was at that time. So they also only know what they know as well. But to be
Yeah.
dismissed and invalidated, which we're going to get to that part of it as well, because that is such a big part of your story because you were dismissed for so long. But before we go into that, why don't we touch on the mental health aspect of what you shared? So, what was that like? Obviously, it impacts you physically. You say all the nausea, the severe pain, the bleeding, and all of that. Talk to us about the mental health aspect of it in terms of your mental and emotional health. Like, how did that impact you? And the reason why I want to bring this up, because of course, we talk about mental health on this podcast, but also to have listeners, if you're listening and you're going through something, maybe you're not going through endometriosis or adenomyosis, maybe you're going through something else, another chronic health condition or illness or something. And I really just want to normalize what it's like because I think a lot of times, generally speaking, too, is that chronic health gets dismissed. Not just from ourselves, like we do that to ourselves, but I think all around. Sometimes, a lot of times, even in the medical system, we get dismissed. And so, yeah, could you talk to us about that part of it?
Yeah, no, totally. And you're right. Like that part is such a big component of my story because I went to the doctors so many times growing up and a lot of the times there wasn't even like, oh, let's do an ultrasound or let's do a CT or something. There wasn't even any interest in digging deeper into what this might be. It was just more about let's just give you medications that's going to help mask the symptoms rather than really going deep into it and saying, okay, what are you eating? It wasn't a holistic approach ever. It was just more like, okay, you have inflammation, let's give you strong anti-inflammatory. You have pain, let's give you strong painkillers. Let's put you on birth control, which is something that we now know is not even a cure or any, it doesn't help really. It might help some, I shouldn't say that, but yeah, it was pretty much just dealing with the symptoms. And I remember I was in university at this point when it started getting really bad. My symptoms got a lot worse after I was 18. And I went to a gynecologist and she said to me, well, the only way to officially diagnose endometriosis is to do surgery, like a laparoscopy surgery, to see if there's actually tissue in there. And she's like, that's too invasive. We don't want to do that. And she kind of left it at that. And then she just kept prescribing me strong painkillers. And I remember sitting there and I almost started crying. And I'm like, so there's nothing else you can do? And she's like, no. And I felt very, very low. That was one of my lowest points. I still remember where the clinic was and everything. It was such a big moment for me, thinking, well, this is how I'm going to have to live the rest of my life, is just taking pain meds that barely help and dealing with this every single month. And I would give a lot of props to my husband. He's very like question everything and advocate for yourself, and he works in the healthcare field, so I think that's why he kind of sees a bit. And not to put down the healthcare system, I also work in healthcare, but
Mhm.
you always have to advocate for yourself. And so he was like, well, let's just keep finding you more specialists, let's keep finding you another doctor, let's ask, let's do our own research and ask the right questions that we need to ask. So I did do that, and to my disappointment, I lived in Kamloops, I lived in Richmond, I lived in Chilliwack, and so many doctors just didn't have any answers for me. And then another part, I guess, that we talked about before is like in the Indian community, generally, you don't really talk about your health issues, right? Like my parents would say, oh, you don't need to tell everybody about this health issue. And I don't know how good that is, because I'm a person that's pretty open about things. I don't really care about that stuff. And I had spoken to a family member about it, and that family member had connected me to somebody else who has the same condition as me. And she said, well, you should definitely ask for a referral to the BC Women's Pelvic Pain Clinic. I hadn't even heard of this clinic. I had no idea this place even existed. And so I got a referral form, took it to my doctor. My doctor had never suggested this as an option to me. And after 1 year, I got into this clinic that has changed my life. And I would have never known about this unless I connected, unless that person had connected me to this individual who told me about the clinic. But I think that's kind of why it's so important to share your stories and your struggles, because you never know how much your story might help the next person.
Yeah, and I think you shared that with me as well. I think you also mentioned you were in a private like endo group, and then you somehow connected that, or you shared it on your story. Is that what you're referring to? And then that person was like,
Yeah.
go to the BC Women's Pelvic Clinic.
Yeah, yeah, that was another story where somebody I knew my whole life was like, "Oh my God, you have it too," and I was like, "I didn't know you had it." And so, just like being able to connect with people, it makes you feel less alone, especially in like kind of a particular condition like this that's not very common. It's so nice to know that there's other people out there that are going through the same thing.
Yeah, that you've touched on so much, but that community aspect is so huge because again, we deal with this stuff alone and we think we're isolated and we think we're the only ones. But then when you can connect with other people who have also gone through similar experiences, it just makes you feel like a sense of belonging. Because you do feel very on the outskirts of everything. And then, like you said, gaslighting yourself, like, am I crazy? Is this normal? Is there something wrong with me? I think that's
Yeah.
so natural. And I don't think it's really talked about that much, but I hear you in a totally different way, obviously, with my own stuff. But it does something like up here. That's what I'm saying. It's not just the physical symptoms and the physical health, but it really does something to you mentally and emotionally. And
Yeah.
really want to normalize that for everyone who is going through something similar. Like, you're not crazy. Your body knows. Um,
Yeah.
and it's crazy to me. That sounds really just not acceptable, dismissed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was 12 years old when I had symptoms, and like I would say I officially got diagnosed with endometriosis at, I think it was age 28.
More than
Which is,
that. Holy
yeah,
smoke. So
yeah.
yeah.
So yeah, so that many years I just dealt with symptoms. I dealt with like, like I mentioned, kind of Indian family thing is like keep it hush hush. You don't need to tell people. Even if we're like at family events, it was like, oh, do you have to sit there with your heat pad? Do you have to like make a big deal out of it? But you can't help it, right? Like if you're not well, you're not well.
Mhm.
So yeah, like just dealing with it for that many years, and then just the sense of relief I had the first time being at the BC Women's Hospital and like even filling out the questionnaire. I was like, oh my God, I deal with all these symptoms. It was from 1 to 10. Do you feel burning in your stomach? Do you feel burning in your thighs? Questions like that. And I was like, yes. For the first time ever, I felt heard. I was like, these guys really understand what I'm going through.
Yeah, and it makes a huge difference when someone can see you for who you are, for what it is, and
Yeah.
hear you out and to put a name to what you've been feeling and experiencing for so long.
Yeah.
Um, on the terms of just how it impacted you, just so people can get a more understanding, how did it impact? I'm assuming it did impact your day-to-day functioning because you had so much pain, like your work life, your home life, your relationships. Talk to us about what that was like, because I would assume that that would put you back a bit if you're not feeling well and you wouldn't be able to show up as your 100% self.
Yeah, no, totally. It starts even just as far back as high school, having to skip school. I would have to stay home and, taking these strong pain meds. So missing out on social events or classes and then having to catch up on homework. That was part of it. And then, of course, if there was my friend's birthday party or, those kind of things are a big deal when you're in high school, having to miss that. And then even in university, I think I struggled a lot because I was no longer with my parents. I had moved out at that point at 17 and just navigating that by myself. I'd have to call 911, have to get picked up. Like, it was really embarrassing. I remember, not that it should be embarrassing, but at that point in my life, I found it embarrassing that an ambulance had to come to my dorms, open the door, take me all the way to the hospital. And like, the emerge visits were many of them, which I wish I didn't have to go through. But waiting in the emerge for them to pretty much give you strong IV meds, and then you're back home and dealing with this again. And my flare ups happen a lot more during my period time. So I knew, like, once a month, every month, I would have anxiety that I would have to probably deal with something. Because some months were okay, still painful, but some months were so bad that I'd have to go to the hospital. So yeah, in university, that was a struggle. And then at work, I'm lucky I've had very understanding employers. But I would sometimes have to take my work home and finish my day at home, or call in sick. But thankfully now, with the treatment that I've been given and the surgeries I've gone through, I'm at a good place now. But for many years, it was very, very tough.
Yeah, and we're gonna get into that part of it, how you ended up at the clinic and then what happened after that. You also ended up getting pregnant. You're a mother now. So we will talk about, because I think it's really important, especially with endo. But just to wrap this part of it up is, so basically you were getting just brushed off this whole time, right? Until after you had gotten pregnant, which we'll get into that. How did you cope with that? With being brushed off time and time again, doctors not really paying much attention or really digging deeper into what was going on? Because this has been going on now for a long time.
Yeah, I think honestly, having a chronic health issue is really what pushed me into spirituality and meditation. I had to do something to cope, and I'm not saying there's anything wrong with taking medications for depression or anxiety. I've taken those as well in the past, but I just was like, you know what, I need to figure this out, because if this is something that I'm dealing with for the rest of my life, which it seemed like, I need to make up a routine for myself or something that can get me through these tough times, because I can't live my life like this. So I almost had like a game plan for my flare up days. First check is take a really hot shower, because showers would make me feel better. It would just kind of relax my body. And I would get up, like if I was working the next day, I would get up 2 hours before just to do this regimen. So I'd get up, have a banana, because you're not supposed to have those types of meds on an empty stomach, have a banana, take my pain meds, jump in the shower for like sometimes 45 minutes. And then I would try to meditate or listen to a positive podcast. And then I would try to get on with my day. And of course, I'm very social, so talking to my mom, talking to my husband, he was my boyfriend at the time. They were such a big support to me, because I don't know how I would get through it if I didn't have my close family and friends to talk to. But I think the social aspect of it, having people, your go-to people, and then also just having your own personal practice that you could do every day, I think those were really the things that got me through it.
Wow, that's amazing. And I mean, of course, I love all of those. I think they're so important. And, getting into a routine, you kind of have to. That's where that, I guess, not accountability, but that's where you kind of have to take ownership. I guess accountability in a way, or ownership of what you can control, because you couldn't control the symptoms or even the medical system. That's something that's completely out of your control. You can advocate, but it comes to the point of like, what can I control? What can I do to make this a little bit easier? It obviously doesn't take away your symptoms. It doesn't take away the pain. It doesn't take away the mental, emotional toll, but it gives you something to work with. It gives you some power and control over how you spend your days and how you nourish yourself and how you start to really connect with yourself, and what actually makes me feel better in those moments that I'm in despair and I'm in a lot of pain. And so, did you always have that within you, would you say, the chronic health and the pain that forced you to think about these practices?
No, I think it was kind of a newer thing for me when I moved out. Because when I was at home in my childhood and growing up as a teenager, my mom was always so amazing. I would not be feeling well, and she'd be like, okay, lay in bed, I'll bring you this, I'll bring you that. And she took care of me 100%. And then now I'm living in a whole different city by myself. And I was like, oh, I need to learn how to take care of myself because I don't know what to do. So I really had to start. That's when I started, is I'm like, I'm on my own now. I have to come up with something that's going to make me feel better.
Yeah, I think you kind of have to. I know that might sound really hard and if you're at the beginning stages of something, but we can't control some things, but we can control a lot of things. And it's taking that power back because if we don't, no one else is going to do that for us, right? Clearly, the doctors and the medical system basically failed you. And I'm not saying this happens in every case, but it does happen. That's the reality of it. And that's just the truth of it. And things need to shift. And like you said, it's masking the symptoms. They're putting a band-aid on the symptoms, but not getting to the root cause of what's happening. And I'm a very, very big believer with obviously my personal story with my vision too, is that life is meant to be a holistic approach. There needs to be a holistic approach. What are you eating? What are you watching? What are you listening to? Who are you surrounding yourself with? Are you moving your body? What foods are you eating? Are you eating whole foods or are you eating junk? Do you have time to connect with yourself? Are you going to therapy? Are you processing your emotions? All of that is so very interconnected. And I think that's the missing piece in our Western world here. And there's a time and space, again, not against medication. If you need to take it, you take it. But I don't believe, my personal belief is that I don't think it's the first thing. I think there's so many other things that should be looked at before we just slap a band-aid over masking the symptoms, because those symptoms are never going to go away, right? Until you get to
Hmm.
the root cause, what's actually causing that. You have to take care of your mental health. You have to take care of your emotional health. Those are so, so important. I think a lot of times people are so hyper focused on their physical appearance, but the other aspect of it is equally important. And I really wish that we can bridge Western medicine and Eastern medicine together because that's where the holistic approach comes into play. And
I
I don't
totally
even think
agree.
we're close because I've experienced a lot of actually backlash and just really obscure comments because I've turned to alternative treatment, obviously, with my health. And I'm so convicted in it that I know it's because of everything that I did that helped me to heal aspects of my health. And it's just really sad that it's not more welcomed.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with you completely. I think that for some reason, the first thing is always medications, and it shouldn't be. I think we'll chat a little bit more about this later, but the stuff that I'm doing now is a big percentage of it is just lifestyle,
Hmm. It's
you know,
like,
which no one told me. That stuff I researched on my own.
hmm. And that's the thing. That's why when you're sharing your story, I was like, wow, it's such a powerful story because we have to take back power. I think so often we put our power into the hands of someone else. And especially when it comes to doctors, we think they know better. We think they know everything. Obviously, they're doctors, they're trained, but they're trained in a specific way. But only we know ourselves best, right? Only we know what we need and how we advocate for that. And again, coming back into taking autonomy over ourselves and our health. Because if you don't, no one's going to do that better than you can for yourself. And so I think that's also something that a lot of people struggle with, right? It's like, well, the doctor said this, and then it's the be all end all. But they're human, right? It's actually
Yeah,
what I'm trying to convey here is they're also human. They're people just like we are all people, and they don't know everything. Just like
yeah.
none of us know everything. And so I think when we put so much power and control into someone else, we lose that autonomy and authority over ourselves. And you're such a prime example of that. Is you did your own research. You dug deep into that. They didn't do that for you, or no one did that. You took the situation into your own hands and you were able to overcome that and educate yourself. And so I think that's such a big part of this. And what I really advocate for too is doing our own research, but also advocating for ourselves and not putting everything in the hands of someone else.
Yeah, I agree. And I think it's a little bit, I don't know if it's like an Indian thing or just like an old school thinking, but when I told my grandma in India, for example, about my condition, she was like, just do whatever the doctor says. Listen to the doctor, right? And like, yeah, to a certain point I agree with that, but
Mhm.
there's also so much more that you can do on
Mhm.
your own.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure, for sure. Um, Let's talk about motherhood because you have a beautiful son and you got pregnant. So I think the reason why I want to pull this out and bring it to the forefront is that a lot of time you hear with endometriosis that you cannot get pregnant. And I've heard that from multiple other people as well. But obviously, that's not the case for everyone. And I just, again, want to preface this. This is Jasmine's story. And so it will look different than yours. But I also know someone else who had endo and got pregnant as well. So it's not necessarily 100% factual, like the doctors tell us, that you cannot get pregnant because you did get pregnant and you had a great pregnancy and you have a beautiful boy. So, yeah, let us know about that. What
Yeah.
insight can you provide for anyone who's listening around that? I guess it is a myth, I would say.
Yeah, 100%. I think there are people who have endometriosis who struggle with fertility, and my heart goes out to them because I am now part of that group. I was very blessed that the first time my husband and I decided to try to have a baby, we got pregnant within 2 months, and I have a beautiful 5-year-old boy now. But now, after having him, my endo got quite bad, and it was to a point that now they had to remove both of my fallopian tubes, and now I can't naturally have a baby. It'll need to be through IVF. So I've kind of lived on both sides. I've been the person that's like, yeah, I have endometriosis and I was able to have a baby, and now I'm on the other side where it's like, nope, I'm having issues with fertility now again. Sorry, not again, but I'm now having fertility issues. But it's quite difficult because I think it really depends on how much the endometriosis has damaged your reproductive organs.
Mhm.
So some people it may not affect it at all, and then other people it will affect. So if it's something that you're interested in doing and you do have the condition, talk to your doctor, and then if your doctor can't help, then get referred to a fertility clinic. We're here in BC. All of Fertility has been a great place. They deal with a lot of people with endometriosis, so they do have good insight on it. But yeah, I would not close that door if it's something you're interested in.
Were you shocked when you got pregnant?
I was shocked how quickly it happened because at that point, I don't believe I had been officially diagnosed with endometriosis, but I knew that I was having issues. I knew I had symptoms. I was suspecting that I probably have endometriosis. Yeah, so I was surprised.
Yeah, and I
Pleasantly
guess I
surprised.
ask that because, yeah, if you're told you can't, and that's the standard norm, is if you have that, it's going to either be really hard to conceive or you're
Yeah.
not going to be able to have kids at all. And so that's why I'm curious of what was that like when you did find out you were pregnant?
Yeah, it was very exciting. Very, very exciting.
Yeah.
And very blessed. I still, even when I go to the hospital, sometimes when I've had multiple surgeries for endo, and people say, have you had previous surgeries? I'll say, yeah, my C-section. They're like, what? You were able to have a baby? And I'm like, yeah. And then actually, the last nurse that was with me during my surgery was like, my sister has endometriosis and she has not been able to have a baby. So yeah, it's definitely a mix.
Mhm. Yeah, and to what you're saying too, my heart goes out to anyone who, if you are listening and you're having challenges and you're not able to conceive, my heart goes out to you because it's really hard. That's really, really challenging. And even like you shared, Jasmine, you're on the other side of that. You've experienced both. And I can imagine that's really hard as well. Are you open to sharing what that has felt like for you, I guess, emotionally, mentally, just so maybe anyone who listening can relate to that, to what you're sharing, but also maybe, I guess, normalize it because you've experienced both ends of that now.
Yeah, no, I think the hardest thing for me now is because my son is 4.5. He's turning 5 soon next month, and everyone says, "Okay, so it's time to have the next one. It's time to have the next one." And people will say that to me a lot. And in the beginning, I kind of wouldn't say much, but now I'm really open with them. I'm like, actually, I have a health condition and I can't naturally have another baby. And people's faces have gone like just they look horrified, and one girl almost started crying. This was at a reception party, and she was like, I wish I hadn't even said that to you. And I'm like, no, it's fine, it's my reality. But I do think that it kind of like I'm coming across more stuff on Instagram now about why you shouldn't really ask that question, like, oh, are you gonna have another one, or are you thinking about having kids, because you don't know what people's stories are, right? Like, it's very sad for me personally because I always imagined having 2 kids. I grew up with a brother, and so I always thought I would have 2 kids, and my son is now at the age too where he sees his friends with siblings or his cousins with siblings, and he's like, how come I can't have a sibling? So it breaks my heart because I wish I could bring another child into this world, but it's difficult. So I think there's also grieving that goes into that. I haven't even dove too much into that because I don't know 100% if that chapter is closed for me or not. It all depends on the IVF, but I try to stay surface level with it because I'm like, I don't want to dig too deep into it until I 100% know that it's closed.
Yeah,
But it's a tough one.
thank you for sharing that. I know this is a hard, tough topic, and so many women experience this and go through this, and it's really hard, right? You want something so bad, and then you feel like your body's just not doing what it should be doing. And there's a
Yeah.
lot that comes with it. We're not going to go too much into that on today's episode, but just know that you're not alone. And I hope that by Jasmine sharing her story, it allows you to feel less alone in it, because I know how isolating these situations and experiences can be. On that topic, actually, Jasmine, I have a question because you mentioned Instagram and social media. Um, I think a lot of times we can get triggered when we are on social media. I myself, in different contexts, but look at someone else's life and I'm like, oh gosh, I don't have my life together and I wish I had that, or whatever it is, right? In different seasons of life. So when it comes to that, and with what you just shared and where you're at now with not being able to naturally conceive and not knowing what this chapter looks like, when you go on social media, what does that look like for you when you see other people sharing pregnancies or sharing stuff like that? How does that feel for you? Do you feel triggered? And if so, how do you navigate that? And the reason why I'm bringing this up is because I think this is very prevalent in our world today, because social media is just our lives. Like, we're on our phones all the time, and so many people struggle with this. And so, if there's any insight or wisdom or anything that you can provide for the listeners that do feel just this comparison and really feeling triggered, it has actually nothing to do with the other person. It's an internal thing. And that's what I always say too, is when you're triggered, you want it so bad and you can't have it. So it's actually has zero to do with what you're watching or what you're seeing. So yeah, if you feel comfortable sharing that with.
Totally. No, I see that all the time because my son's around the same age that a lot of my friends would have had their first child and now they're trying to have their second, and so many have had their second and third already. So, yeah, initially, I think in the beginning when I realized they had to cut both my fallopian tubes and then I wouldn't be able to conceive naturally, I feel like a lot of the baby posts or like, oh, we're trying for a second, it used to trigger me, and like you're saying, it's nothing to do with the other person. I would not wish anything bad on anybody, just because they're able to have a baby. That's amazing for them. I think it was more so like, oh, I wish I had that, or I wish I was going through that. And I would say in the beginning it was triggering for me, but now it's more like I understand that my story is my story and their story is their story. And I think you almost have to be excited about the life that you have. So for me, I've been looking into all these like perks of having a single child. With the economy these days, like you'll be able to afford to send your kid to university. You'll be able to go on way more vacations because you're only paying for, your husband, you, and your son. So I think just like being positive about the life that you have and all the perks of your situation helps you focus more on that. And I guess me doing that has also helped me be more excited for people with their journey. It's like, oh, you're having two more kids. That's so exciting for you. Yeah,
Interesting.
so I think focusing more on the positive side of my situation
Mhm.
has helped me
Yeah.
become more thing of that kind of stuff.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. And again, this is not going to be the same for everyone. Jasmine's just speaking from her experience, because I can see how this can be very jarring for people to hear. And it's not easy, is what I guess I'm trying to say. You don't just flip a switch and then all of a sudden you're positive. That's not what we're saying here. So I don't want this to get misconstrued. This is just Jasmine sharing where she's at now. And I'm sure you've gone through so much more to get to where you're at. And it's all the work that you've done, and it's your whole journey encompassed to where you are now, is that you have this beautiful son. And if this is where your story is, then that's where your story is. But you didn't just wake up like this.
No, not at all. That took me like years to get to the point that I'm at now, and I'm not lying. Sometimes I do still get triggered. I always see posts about how a daughter is your future mini best friend that you have, and I'm like, I said to my mom actually yesterday, I was like, Mom, I wish I could have a daughter because my mom and me have such a friendish relationship now where we're at in life. Because I know one day my son's gonna have a girlfriend or a wife, and he's probably gonna forget about me. But if I had a daughter, she'd probably come to me for advice and all that stuff. So it still triggers me, but I think I just have to like make myself get into this positive mindset about it.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah, that's great. It's nice to hear that you are where you're at. And also to what you shared, to recognize that you're gonna go back and forth. There might be days where you're feeling great and you're, yeah, this might be my life and I'm okay with that. I have a family of three and things are great. And it's always an and. I've shared this a lot on the podcast. It's life is a both and. So there might be days where you're really upset about it and you're grieving. You brought up grief, and obviously I talk a lot about grief on the show, but there is a lot of grief in that. Envisioning a future that you thought you would have, but you can't have it. There's so much grief underneath that, especially when it comes to IVF, infertility, and trying to conceive. So much grief and loss that I don't think people really recognize that they're grieving, but it's totally grief. You're grieving the loss of a life that you thought you'd have, or you're grieving your health, right? Because obviously there's something going on in your body that's not allowing you to conceive naturally. So there's so much underneath that. So be gentle with ourselves as well. There's good days and there's bad days, like you said. The other thing I would encourage, and this is not just about IVF or infertility, I think just generally across the board, because we're talking about social media, is it's okay to take a break. It's okay to remove yourself. And I honestly would say, I think highly needed and necessary. I don't think we're meant to be glued to our phones and on social media all the time. And so if you are in a space where you're feeling so triggered and so much resentment, perhaps anger, even, because, and these are all normal things to feel that because of where you're at, I really encourage everyone who's listening, maybe taking a pause and taking a break. It's okay to take a social media break. It's not going anywhere. It'll be there when you're back, but also then getting really grounded and rooted within yourself and giving yourself the time and space to grieve, to be with your emotions, because that can be really helpful. Because the more we are on social media and the more we're triggered, the more it's just going to cause inner turmoil. And I don't know what your take is on taking a break, but I'm really a big advocate for removing ourselves from situations that are not really serving us in the best way and taking the time and space we need to disconnect from that and reconnect with ourselves.
No, I agree. And I think we talked about this before too about like the two sides of social media. It can be so helpful. Like I mentioned, I've connected with people that have endo all through social media and you feel like so supported. And then there's the other side of comparing your life to other people or, various things like that, or even just feeling overstimulated. Sometimes when you're scrolling, it's like, what am I looking at? Do I really need to consume this content?
Mhm.
So I agree. I think having like guidelines or boundaries around screen time is so big.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, let's talk about advocacy a little bit more. We've talked about it. So, I guess I'm curious, why do you feel self-advocacy is so, so, so crucial and essential to our healing, not just physically, but equally to our mental, emotional, and even spiritual health?
Yeah, I think, like you mentioned this before too, but no one will have your back as much as yourself. You know your body, your physical body, you know your mental health, everything that, what do you need in this moment? And I feel like you just got to go with your gut instinct. Like if something doesn't feel right, it may probably isn't right. So just, reach out to, it doesn't only have to be your doctor. Alternative therapies, like we've talked about. I'm huge on counseling. I've had the same counselor for the past like 6 years, and she's amazing. She knows me. When I share a story, she'll be like, "Oh, remember, 2021, this happened, and you navigated this." So I feel like counseling's amazing. Exercise. Getting, whether you're not a gym person, even just going outside for walks, meditating. It doesn't even have to be like a religious spiritual thing, just like, doing those types of things to keep your, mental health, physical health, and spiritual health all aligned, I think is so important. And I think advocating for yourself to to all of these different practitioners as much as you need to is big, because you're not going to be able to, always know all the answers or know exactly what to do. So it's okay to go out there and ask for help.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, what would you say on the flip side of that if you don't advocate for yourself? What do you think? What's the opposite of that?
I think just being stuck in your situation and just complaining about it. Like, I remember saying to my parents, like, you guys are probably sick of hearing me that I have stomach issues, because that would happen constantly, like every day of my life until I got help. I would just be laying in bed in so much pain, and you're just going to be stuck in the same situation. And, you might also have those situations where you're advocating for yourself and you're still in that situation, but at least you know that you're doing everything that you can do. I
Yeah.
think that's the biggest part, is having a little bit of control over a situation that you don't really have control over helps you feel a little bit better. Whether it's diet, exercise, whatever it is, just knowing that you're doing all you can do.
Yeah, like we were saying before, right? Having some sort of control in a situation you don't have control over is very empowering. And you take back your power that way. Um, I want to go back to you got pregnant, you had your son, and then you said your symptoms. So during your pregnancy, you were symptom free from what I remember, and everything was good. You had the baby. And then after that is when your symptoms really flared up. And I think you said came back much stronger. So if we've been following the journey, so 12 years old, now we're at 28, 29. You had your baby. And it wasn't until this time around that your symptoms flared up quite bad, is when you actually got the diagnosis and then received the support. Talk to us about that time. I think I glossed over that.
Yeah, so that's another myth I should talk about, is they used to say that if you have endometriosis, have a baby and then your symptoms will get better. My symptoms did not get better. So I don't know, that might help for some people, but for me the symptoms came back angrier. So it was quite tough, especially now having a baby to take care of. I remember there was days where I would put my son in one of those baby seats and he would be sitting in the bathroom and I would be in the bathroom just on the floor. Like it was brutal until my mom could come and help me, or my mother-in-law. But it was very tough. So at that point is when I actually saw a nurse practitioner, and she was the one who really took the time to listen to me, even more than any like doctor has ever listened to me. She spent maybe like 45 minutes with me talking to me about my symptoms, and she was the one who referred me to a gynecologist who ended up saying, let's do the surgery and find out if you do have endometriosis. And he was the one who diagnosed me with stage 4 endometriosis. And he said, I wouldn't operate on you next time because your situation is so severe. So he did the surgery. I had no symptoms for 1 year. And then exactly at the 1 year mark is when my symptoms started coming back again.
After the
And that's when,
surgery.
after
After
the
the
first
first surgery.
surgery.
Okay.
Yeah. And then that's when I pushed for a referral to the BC Women's Pelvic Pain Clinic. And after I went there, I think I mentioned this a bit earlier, is when I really appreciated their approach, because they were looking at everything. They have a physiotherapist there who looks at pelvic health. They have counselors there who talk specifically about, everything that comes with having a condition like this. And then, of course, surgery and then medication was the other components of it. But it was, yeah, then I ended up having another surgery through them, and at this point my endometriosis got worse the second round, so they had to remove both fallopian tubes. They had to get a I can't remember the terminology now, but it was a surgeon who works on the bowels to work on endometriosis that was growing on my bowels. And then, of course, everywhere else it was growing as well. It was growing on my appendix. I remember going to the Emerge and saying, I swear my appendix is bursting. And they're like, it's not. But now we know it's because there was endometriosis growing on the appendix.
Wow.
So, yeah, so after the BC Women's Pelvic Pain Clinic surgery, since then, knock on wood, I haven't had any symptoms. But they also put me on medication, so I think I'm on 3 different medications right now to kind of keep my symptoms at bay. But I've been good since then. Yeah, things are good, but that doesn't mean like I don't have anxiety about it. Like every time another year goes by, I think, oh my gosh, are the symptoms gonna come back? Even now, at any point, things can get worse again, and maybe these meds are not gonna always work. But it's something. It's like the unknown that causes me anxiety.
Mhm, mhm.
Because there's no clear cure for endometriosis. It's known as a chronic illness. You'll have it forever. And then also during the second surgery is when they diagnosed me with adenomyosis. So now figured out that I have a second condition as well.
Okay. And so how are you navigating your day to day? Things are fine, I guess. In quotations, I'm saying that like, or you're on medication, obviously, but compared to what it was pre-surgery.
Yeah, way better, way better. I feel like I can function normally, but it is a lot of making sure I'm staying on top of meds, making sure that I'm booking the appointments I need to get my injections. And my lifestyle has completely changed too. I try to exercise at least 5 days a week. I'm gluten free, dairy free. Try to eat low anti-inflammatory diet, limiting drinking. Although I will say I like my glasses of wine, especially on the weekends. But you have to have everything in balance. I have actually a really good mentor, and she always says to me, Jasmine, you don't have to be 100%. 80 and 20 is okay. So, on the weekends, enjoy yourself. You have to live life too. And then keeping my stress levels low is also big.
Mm-hmm.
As much as I can, I try to meditate. I try to listen to positive podcasts as much as I can. And yeah, that's kind of my life right now.
Mm-hmm. So you're still having to do a lot and making sure that you have that balance, but also a good quality of life. Right. I
Yeah.
think that's that part you're speaking about is that 80/20 and yeah, because what's the quality of life if you're so restricted? I don't believe in that either when you're so restricted. I mean, sometimes you have to do that though. Sometimes for your health, you do have to go all in. And I think that's important and I think that's needed. Sometimes we have to sacrifice things if it's for our health. We're nothing without our health. You know that, I know that. And I think now more and more, it's so crucial to take care of our health. And so if that means there's certain seasons that you have to go all in 100%, I actually think that's neat. I think that's actually the right thing to do. And then once you're able to come to a place where you're at now, like you're mentioning, you're at bay, things are relatively good, then there's room to reintroduce certain things and give yourself that little bit of lenience. So
Yeah,
yeah, I think that's so
I
important.
agree. Yeah, I had like 1 year where I was really strict. Like I remember it was a year, exactly 1 year where it was no gluten at all, no dairy at all, no alcohol at all. I was drinking the mocktails that come in a can and stuff, and it was good. Like I had very low inflammation. I was feeling
You
good.
noticed it
But,
right away, and you did that research on your own, you said, right? Like you looked into it and realized that gluten is causing your issues, and alcohol, of course, alcohol is not
yeah.
the greatest for anyone. But yeah, did you notice changes within that year?
Yeah, big time. I would say within the first 2 weeks. So anytime I'm like trying to introduce a new habit, I make like little thing, get a piece of paper and I'll write day one, day two, all the way to 14, and then I'll check mark it every day because that's kind of my motivation. And I'm like, if I can get through 14 days, I should be able to do this. And so I remember starting off with that, and then I'm like, okay, I can do this. And actually, cutting out coffee was big for me too. And I never thought I would be able to cut out coffee because I was a 3 cups a day kind of girl, and now I don't drink coffee either. So I feel like when your health condition has pushed you to such a point, you're like, I'm willing to do anything to not feel this way.
And the sad reality is a lot of people aren't willing to do that. They're not willing to give
Hmm.
up the comfort for the
Yeah.
discomfort, even if it's temporary. But I know you're a big advocate for it, obviously, with everything you shared. And you wouldn't be here right now sharing your story with me and with everyone if you didn't have that, if you didn't advocate, if you didn't take matters into your own hand and do your own research and be uncomfortable for a while, right? It's not
Yeah.
easy to give up what we're so
Yeah.
used to, right? Like how we've lived our life for X amount of years, and all of a sudden you're restricted, you have to do different things. Like you said, the movement, the counseling, the nutrition, who you're spending your time with really matters too. Are these people putting you down? Are they supportive? Or do you feel drained after? Where are you putting your mind? Are you outside in nature? Are you moving your body? All those things matter. And
Yeah.
it's so important to recognize that. And so you've done that so much. I think that's why you've built this now foundation for yourself to be where you're at and be able to navigate both of it. Again, it's a both end because you're still navigating it. It just looks very
Yeah.
different now because you've worked through so much of it and you have the tools that you need to hold space for both of it, for the endo, for the IVF and the unknown, the fear, like you're mentioning, the anxiety that comes with it, and you're also living a very beautiful, fulfilling life. And that was because you pushed and pushed and did what you had to do. You were able to be, I always say, we need to get comfortable being uncomfortable. And through that, right, to now come to the place that you're at. It's not easy by any means. It's taken years to get.
Yeah, years. If you met me like 4 years ago, I would not be the way that I am right now.
Mhm.
I was miserable, laying in bed. It was
Testament
crazy.
to everything that we're talking about. And yeah, even from the beginning, we just connected so well. And we have the same kind of approach and just, the holistic lifestyle, the holistic approach. And I just found your story very fascinating. So I really appreciate you sharing openly and vulnerably because it is hard to share these aspects of ourselves. But I also feel they're needed. And that was the whole premise of the podcast, is to bring that relatability, that connection, bring in real life stories of people who are going through something in their own way, but we can see ourselves through each story in different ways, like the mental health aspect of the anxiety, the fear of the unknown, doing things that scare us. Underneath, there's a lot of parallels that we all go through in our own ways. So,
I agree. And even just normalizing talking about women's health, like, I don't know, growing up, talking about periods or anything like that, it was very taboo. Like, no, we don't talk about this. So even just, I think in our own community, being open, and I know everybody has their different comfort levels about sharing, but I think if you can share with the people that you're close
mhm.
to, I think it just makes everybody feel a little less alone.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Um, let's go back to advocacy for a second because that's obviously a big part what we're talking about. Is why do you think so many people hesitate to advocate for themselves in medical spaces, especially when it comes to their health?
I think, I mean, I'm not putting down doctors, but I think a lot of the times, like the terminology that's being used, I bet you many people leave appointments not even knowing what was just told to them. So I think just like I think feeling nervous that this is somebody that's like very educated, they're an expert in their field, and like if I ask this question, am I going to seem dumb? I think just like throwing that completely out is good and just not being shy to ask questions. I think people are just scared to look dumb when they're asking questions, Like,
Mhm.
and I don't think there's any dumb questions. I think if it's your health, you ask everything and anything.
Mhm. Yeah, and I guess follow up to that, what would you say to someone who feels intimidated speaking up to the doctors? Because I think that's another part of it, is that part of it is the nervousness or not knowing. And I think just taking what they're saying as 100% factual, but I don't agree with that. And I think you are able to challenge the doctor or challenge something if you feel that it's not right. That's where the advocacy comes in, it's pushing the needle, right? And I think that's so important. But I think a lot of times, and even myself, when it comes to authority figures like doctors, I was like this actually at the beginning. I didn't really have a voice. I just was like, okay, they know everything. But obviously, when I turned to alternative treatment and I shifted my whole lifestyle and realized that my health is a whole, it's like I'm a whole person. So it takes a whole dynamic to heal, right? The mental, the emotional, the physical, spiritual. But I didn't have a voice then. Even I'm thinking as I'm asking you that question is that I did feel kind of intimidated because I was like, well, they know that's what they're telling me and it should be black and white, but it's not black and white at all. And I remember I got shut down and yeah, even with the alternative treatment, like I said, there were some things that were said that really turned my head. I'm like, what? But I didn't say anything at the time because I didn't feel comfortable. Now, this is now I'm like 5, 6, 7 years later after that. Had that conversation happen now, I'm way more confident now and I would challenge what is being said. And I think that's okay. So I think part of it too is that we're not used to doing that. We're not used to challenging someone who we think are above us, but they're not above us. They're
Hmm.
like not, they're just doctors, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
so
I agree.
I think that people being intimidated is a big part of it.
Yeah, one tip I would say that I learned through my endometriosis community that we have online is there was this app, and I can't remember exactly what it's called, but you don't even need the app. Like, you could just get a piece of paper, and before you go to the appointment, write down your symptoms and write down questions that you might have. And even that alone just gives you so much power. I remember going to an appointment doing that, and the doctor was about to get up. You know how doctors are in a rush? They'll talk to you for like a minute and then they're like, all right. And I'm like, no, no, sorry, I have a few more things I want to ask. And then, then you have your paper and you're like, no, this, and this. Or even dates, like, yeah, last Thursday, this happened to me. Just keeping track of your own symptoms and having the questions that you want to ask. And even potential, like, my husband hates when I do this, but sometimes I'll come up with treatment options that I've researched. And he's like, let them give you what they think first. So you're not giving them ideas. But I'm like, I've researched this and I'm curious to know, what do you think about this medication? Do you think this could help me? So I think like part of being an advocate for yourself is doing your own research and coming prepared to those appointments.
Absolutely, 1000%. I agree with you. I used to do that too. I used to have a binder actually where I kept all my files. It's massive. And I would do that too because you forget your questions, right? When you're there, things just happen and then you sometimes forget what you're wanting to ask. And you go home, you're like, oh shit, I forgot to ask
Yes.
this. And then you obviously have to wait another X amount of time to then go see some. If it's a specialist, you're not seeing them anytime soon. So that is such a great tip and tool for people. And yeah, tracking it. I think that's so great. And honestly, we should be going in and being, well, I did my own research and this is what I'm finding. I'm bringing that forward. The thing with that, though, which I've experienced, is they usually shut it down because, like, oh, that's not scientifically approved. I've
Mm,
had that being said to me when I know I stand in so much conviction. Me going to India, me doing everything that I did helped reduce the swelling in my retina. I know that. And I realized over time, because I think I just built the confidence and I built my own, like, just like authority over my health. I don't care what they say. I know for a fact that it's everything that I did that is the reason why I was able to do that. So it does get shut down, unfortunately, but I would still go in there.
yeah. And I love you talking about alternative medicine because I think people shouldn't shut that down. I actually, one of my gynecologists had said to me, I know there's going to be people telling you that like the Mediterranean diet's going to help or, acupuncture might help, things like that, but don't listen to them, is what he said to me. And I'm like, no, like if it were, like at that time I was like, okay, I listened to him. And then afterwards I thought about it more and I'm like, no, if doing these things help you, then do it. I've gone to Reiki. Like, I don't know if you've heard of Reiki, like energy work. I've done that, and after a session, like I feel so calm, and my stomach feels less inflamed. So it's like if things work for you, just do it.
And they do. I think, oh, this is like such a bigger conversation. It actually activates me because I'm real life proof that alternative treatment helps. I'm not saying it cured me fully. I'm not saying that my vision miraculously, like speaking from my own personal experience, that it came back. But I was able to heal aspects of it. I was able to heal the depression, the severe depression, and the severe anxiety that I have. I was able to be where I am today and even having this conversation with you because of alternative treatment. Because Western doctors here basically said there's nothing we can do and there's no cure, and this is it. Like, this is your life. The swelling, we can't do anything about that, but their swelling is basically gone now. It's like, well, how did that happen? And I think that's what makes me so frustrated. It's like, wouldn't they want to know? What else are you doing? Maybe they can then help other clients instead of just slapping a band-aid and giving them medication and cutting their eyes open, like in my experience, surgery after
Yeah.
surgery, which makes it actually worse. There's so many people and clients that I've worked with that have said, yeah, I've gotten surgery and now my vision's actually worse than it was prior to. And that's what I was saying. There's a missing piece with Western world and Eastern medicine, and they're both needed and both helpful. They need to bridge that together. And so my
I
frustration always
agree.
comes with like, wouldn't you be curious if I'm telling you that I can see better, that I don't need to use as big as a magnifier when I'm reading things to previous, wouldn't that be curiosity? Like, oh, okay, And so I'm a big believer in alternative treatment. And if people knock it down, like I mean,
Yeah.
bluntly, I'm
Don't
just like,
listen to them.
find a new practitioner, like, period.
Yeah.
Um,
I agree. Like we know ginger and turmeric helps reduce inflammation for a lot of people. No one's ever told my grandma tells me that. Like it's not something a doctor told me, but it's like there is natural stuff that can help.
Yeah, and I mean, I laugh at too because my grandmas would say things growing up and before, even my mom, and I'd shut them down because I didn't know better. And I'd be like, okay, mom, stop it, or grandma, no, you don't know. Everything they've shared is actually relevant and true. And I've come back and be like, oh, mom, yeah, you were right about that. They know because life for them was very different. They didn't have all this medicine thrown at them, pharmaceuticals
Yeah.
thrown at them when they were growing up, where they were and stuff. So yeah, I just, yeah, it rattles me because I don't know. I think people could be healing a lot more quicker and, in like what's the word I'm looking for? Together with Western medicine and Eastern medicine.
I
So,
agree. I think each of like a combination of both is kind of what's needed. Like I know, having ginger and turmeric on its own was not gonna get me where I'm at today,
yeah,
but it helps, right?
yeah.
So like a combination, I think, for sure.
Yeah, for sure. And that's again with the advocacy, they're doing your own research and it's worth it. You are worth it. Your health is worth it. Your healing practices, routines, just moments of joy. What would that be for you? And I know you've touched on it. Is there anything else you want to share around that?
I think just like having, and I'm sure a lot of people can relate to this, is like when you have a chronic illness and you're at such a like low point in your life, when you're out of that, you start appreciating things so much more than you ever would have. Like simple things like being able to go for a walk, being able to go to work, being able to like eat a normal meal with your family, spending time with family and friends. Like you said earlier, if you don't have your health, you have nothing. So I feel like it's really humbling where it shows you what's really important in life.
Yeah, for sure. There's something else actually that you said that I thought was really pivotal. You said something along the lines of, I need to take care of me before I can take care of others. And you shared that with me on a previous call. And I just thought that was so pivotal because you are a mother, you're busy, you work, you have a family and all that. And you talked about all these routines that you've built into your life and practices that are part of your life now, right? You get up early and you do all those things because that's what makes you feel grounded before then you can serve others, whether that be your family or your work. And we use the analogy of the cup being half empty or half full. And so I guess I was curious just to kind of wrap this up. Could you share more of that in your own words and why it matters so much to nourish and support ourselves above anything else or before anyone else? A lot of times people can think that feels selfish, but if you can speak to that from the perspective, but also bring in the mother aspect of it, because I think a lot of mothers struggle with this aspect of it, feeling guilty and not having time for themselves. But you've shared that if I don't fill my own cup, I'm not going to be able to give my 100% to my kids and my husband and my parents and all of that.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think like a lot of the people that are around me that are moms, a lot of it would be like, "Oh, I haven't ate today," or "Oh, I was so busy today, I didn't get a chance to do this." And it's like I don't know how great that is because then you're almost teaching your kids that like you're not that important. You got to put other people first. And I think that putting you can't really take care of others unless you're taking care of yourself. So like I know for myself, the mornings, and I'm not perfect. For example, today I did not wake up and exercise. I was so tired. But my ideal day would be waking up in the morning, exercising and showering and having my breakfast, and then my son wakes up, and then it's like I'm already ready for him. Whereas like when I just roll out of bed, feel kind of grumpy, I'm tired, and so I think from both aspects of like whether you're a mother or not, I think just being able to get up and like have a bit of a routine for yourself, and sometimes people aren't morning people, which is also okay, but just like being able to give yourself like we have 24 hours in the day, give yourself 1 hour to do whatever it is that makes you feel inspired or happy. I've been in these like connected motherhood courses before where it's like talks a little bit about that. It's like what is something that brings that spark back in you, and for some people it's painting, working on a piece of art, some people it's exercising, some people it's getting out in nature. So it's like whatever your little practice is, whether it's for painting, for example, that might be like a once a week thing, but like moving your body, if you can try to do that daily or meditating or something, I think it's just so important so that you're almost primed. I think Tony Robbins that talks about this, priming yourself to be positive and strong for the day. It's so important.
Yeah, I love that. Like you said, if we can't find an hour out of our day, then, that's, and I can't speak because I'm not a mom, right? So I don't have kids. So that's why I wanted you to speak to that because you are a mom and you are able to incorporate these practices for yourself. And yeah, you're not perfect. It's not going to happen every day, but it's a commitment that you've made to yourself. And you know how
Yeah.
good you feel when you do those versus when you don't do them. You know how you show up as a present mom or a wife or even a coworker or what have you as a friend when you do those things when you're grounded versus when you're not. And
Yeah,
that's,
it's so different.
yeah,
Your whole day is shapes different, you know? Your whole perspective is different on the day. It's like you drop a coffee when your brain is primed versus not primed, and it'll be completely
yeah,
different.
yeah. So, so important. And maybe it's just starting off with 5 minutes. I always say that don't go from 0 to 100 with all these things, right? Don't go from no practices to now you're like, I want to do this and this and this and have like a 10-page list. Start small and start slow, but do it. Make it a habit, build that habit. And the habit only builds when you keep doing it. I loved what you shared about day one and you wrote all the way to day 14 and then checking it off. I love that because when you see something visually, it does something to our brains. It provides that momentum. It starts to rewire it slowly. You're like, oh, I did that. Then you almost are in competition with yourself, or I do this. I'm like, okay, well, I've made it 5 days. I can keep going one more day. And if you keep saying that to one more day, before you know it, maybe you've gotten 30 days. You've got to hit a whole month with whatever it is, and always just stack upon whatever it is. Start off with 5 minutes. Maybe that's just 5 minutes of journaling, or maybe 5 minutes of walking on the treadmill, or whatever it is, whatever works for you. And then say you're going to do that and then build upon that. Do that every day. Don't just do it one day here and there. Actually make a plan and be consistent with it. And like Jasmine was saying, use a tool like that. Check it off, write it down so you can visually see it. And then go from there. And then when you've got that under control, you're like, okay, now I can add something else. And now your 5 minutes has turned into 10 minutes. And so I think also beginning of your day and at the end of your day is always such a great way to incorporate these tools as well, because then you're waking up and you're fresh and then you're going to sleep with a more grounded and regulated at that time too.
Yeah, and even I find another thing that helped me as well is like associating it with something that you know you have to do. So my meditation practice started with me brushing my teeth in the morning. I'd be like, okay, I have to brush. So while I'm brushing, like I'm just gonna take a few deep breaths. And then same with I started this gratitude practice of like I have every single morning I had to list 3 things that I'm grateful for, and that was always in the shower. So it like connecting it to like something I know because physical stuff we will never forget. Brushing we'll never forget. You know, doing our makeup, things like that that we think the outside world will notice, we will always do. So it's like trying to associate a new habit with something that you already do. I
That's
feel like that was
that's
really
really
helpful.
smart. Yeah, I've never actually thought of it like that. But that is so good. If you're already going to be doing something, why not do two things at once?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
totally.
that's so great. Awesome. Okay, I think we'll just wrap up there. Thank you so much for sharing your story. I know there's a lot there, and I hope this is helpful for anyone that is going through something. Maybe it's similar, maybe it's a totally different condition or chronic health, but I hope you're able to see yourself through what was shared today and at least even take something away with it. Even just reflect on that. What's one thing that you can take away from this episode that you can do to better your health, better your life, or maybe even learn how to advocate for yourself if that's the situation that you're in? Okay, one-to-one quality time or group hangs,
Group hangs,
voice notes or long form texts,
long form texts,
road trip or plane ride,
plane ride,
save money or spend money,
spend money,
take pictures or live in the moment,
live in the moment.
always early or always late.
Always early. Late gives me so much
Oh
anxiety.
yeah, me and you both. Podcast or playlist.
Podcast.
Okay. Yes. Alrighty. Thank you so much, Jasmine. That's a wrap for this episode for anyone who's watching or listening, and I will see everyone soon.